Can everybody who's calling in hear me?
Yes.
It's all right. All right, for those of you who braved the traffic, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're about to get started. Perhaps we'd like to go around the room and introduce ourselves because there are people who are called in who probably cannot see everyone at the tables. Bobby, you want to start?
Good morning. My name is Bhalu Mittal. I work with Millennium Takeda, and I'm the co-chair for the CRO-CMO working group.
Good morning, John Riley, Tetragenetics, one of the co-chairs for BD and Finance.
Pete Hebert, I'm Director of Economic and Global Affairs here at MassBio.
Torsten Jebsen, representing the Danish-Swedish Life Sciences cluster called Medicon Valley, here as an observer.
Hi, Horatio Gabron, representing BioWin, the health cluster of Wallonia, Belgium.
John Hillinan from MassBio. Mark Cody from Excelliant Partners and a working group co-chair for EU.
Steve Riesinger from MedChem Partners, working group co-chair for drug discovery.
Constantine Liddick, Nada McLennan and Fish. I'm the co-chair of Legal and Regulatory Committee.
Haywan Small from Novartis, and I'm the co-chair of the HR working group.
I'm Patrick Marshall from Stratacuity, and along with Eamon, am a co-chair for the HR working group.
People who are calling in, could you introduce yourselves?
Masha Hareli, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. We can all hear you.
Great. I'm Masha Hareli, a founder and president of ATR, and I'm a co-chair of the Drug Discovery Forum.
Hello, Denise Aronson, Safety Partners, co-chair of the working group for SEF.
Michelle Balser, Michelle Harrison, I know you called in earlier. Are you there? Oh, seem to have lost someone. All right, well, let's get started. Here's our planning meeting for today. Let me just show you the agenda. Now, all of you got your the outline for today's meeting. I want to talk first about forum best practices and review. Angelos, Dr. Gotzer just walked in, our FDD co-chair. He's going to get some coffee. We're going to review forum best practices, basically clarify roles and responsibilities of the co-chairs and the working groups. And then, excuse me, we're going to review process, and John Halloran is going to say a few words about what worked best for him and his partners in the Entrepreneurs University. And then we're going to dive into our global series forums. We'll talk about content framework, and again, this is a framework to build on. We need your input on we're on the right track and suggestions for more content and speakers. And then hopefully what we'd like to do is select forum leads, lead working groups to work on each of the four series forums, and then action items and adjournment. And just to clarify, the roles and responsibilities, each working group is tasked with two things. Basically, number one is to collaborate on our series forums. And this year, as you know, it's the global issues are our theme for 2014. Last year was very ambitious when we did our Adventures in Biotech series. We did 6 of them, 2 a month. All of you did an incredible job producing these. We had attendance and buzz that we've never had before. We're gonna step back a little bit with a more reasonable schedule and have basically 4 series forums, March through June. The second task for working group is to produce standalone deep dive forums in your field of expertise. This is really your chance to take a deep dive into your field. These are topic-driven forums with technical material. 3 or 4 per year is reasonable. They can be associated with theme of series forums or just whatever is happening that you feel would be of value to the membership. And again, we're heading more towards quality rather than quantity. If you have more that you'd like to produce, that's wonderful. But we feel this is a reasonable expectation. And these standalone forums basically have the same function as the committee meetings that we used to have in the past. So this reaches into deeper areas of the membership. Roles and responsibilities. In case anybody is unclear, let's just reiterate. Co-chairs are tasked with planning and executing the forums. That means you all develop forum content and topics. That means the co-chairs write up the title, the description, develop the target market, people that you want in the chairs, who needs to hear what you're performing. And you're also responsible for marketing, personal marketing. You take care of speaker outreach and coordination of speakers. That means any con calls that need to happen. Co-chairs need to schedule regular work group brainstorming and planning sessions. Many groups find once a month works. I know Denise, SEF, has almost a weekly planning call, which really keeps things together. And this means creating and managing a running pipeline of the ideas, topics, speakers, anything, keeping each other informed. Co-chairs need to keep MassBio, i.e. me, in the planning loop and provide information as noted in a timeline that I'm sure you're all familiar with, and I can bring that up later. And attending these general working group meetings is really mandatory because otherwise there's duplication of effort. Now, if we all know what we're all doing, there's terrific opportunity to collaborate. Like Bobby has done in the past. The CRO group has collaborated on terrific 2 forum series with biostats, data management, and clinical trials. We had great feedback about that. So best practices, process for executing forums successfully, efficiently. The regular planning calls or meetings are absolutely essential. You simply can't stay in touch and keep things moving without touching base regularly. In person, they're always more productive. And I'd be happy to provide a conference room anytime. Just let me know or whatever works. Somebody needs to keep track of the pipeline and take notes for meeting minutes. You can rotate, excuse me, who will do this, or maybe one volunteer in the group will take it on for 6 months and then pass it along. But again, that running pipeline and a live document of notes from meeting to meeting is essential for seeing where you've been and keeping track of where you're going. The pipeline should include, for each topic, why is it important? Why is it newsworthy? And again, that all-important target market. Who do you want in the audience? Job titles, particular companies, everything. List of potential speakers and a hot list of companies and interests, and who's going to lead and contribute to each of these items and then lead the effort on any one particular forum. These can be worked in parallel. It's part of your business practice anyway, as you keep track of people. And then it's fairly simple. As an idea moves through the pipeline to completion, jump it into the calendar. It's time to call me and say, we have a terrific idea. We've got some speakers lined up. Pick a date. So for each forum effort, choose one lead to manage the forum production timeline, coordinate the planning calls, notes, assign group tasks. It isn't all on the lead. Your other co-chairs can do a number of other things, contacting speakers or writing up the description. But the lead acts as the point person for us, MassBio. We put it together, we'll make it happen. And let's see. John, you're on.
Oh. You want to drive?
I want to drive?
Yeah.
Sure.
So a bunch of people have asked me, I was a co-chair of both the Finance Committee and the Entrepreneurs University at the same time, while being CFO of a venture-backed company. A lot of people have asked me how I did it and what sort of drugs I took to give me the time. So I put together a brief presentation. So Mr. John Hessian, my compadre, was the co-chair of Entrepreneurs University.
Can people on call hear John?
Yes.
Chris Kennedy was the co-chair of the Finance Committee. Both of these were running at the same time. What I would say about both of them, different genotype, same phenotype. There was an incredible division of labor. I could not have done both of these committees at the same time without these two guys. I would say they've adopted the Nike mantra to just do it. It was wonderful working with both of them. We started Farmer Days under the Finance Committee. And for those of you who can't see the slide, it essentially shows 6 Farmer Days scheduled between November 2008 and October 2009. Now, what happened with all of these is we got the senior executives from all of these companies to come. These were all fantastic events that led into the Farmer Days that we now hold at MassBio, the signature events. What I would say about all of these, the only way we were able to pull all of this in within a year was that they were all in process at the same time. I'll get back to that. Another best practices was the platform events. And these were events that you can run every year. The first two that are shown on the slide, catalyzing innovation, critical success factors for pharma academia collaboration, and strategies for life science companies in a changing world, were done with Jonathan Gertler of Back Bay Life Science Advisors. Biotechnology 2012, the new normal, and biotechnology 2009, the state of the industry and its implications, were done with Ben Conway, who many of you know, investment banker. Actually, there are more events that were run with both Jonathan and Ben. Each of these took place about every year, every 12, 18 months. And part of the reason why we were able to put together so many Finance Committee events is we got a lot of assistance from people like this. And these people are out there. So a lot of people have asked me, how do you find them? Well, they're in your network. They might be in the forum network. A little bit about Entrepreneurs University. Launched in 2008, about the same time that Chris and I took over the Finance Committee. It was very important when we started that we differentiated from the other entrepreneurial events around the ecosystem, which are running all of the time. And John and I decided it was going to be both strategic and tactical, and it was really about the visiting professors coming in and telling us what they learned in those events. And a couple of examples: Confessions of Serial Entrepreneurs, VC Entrepreneur Smackdown. I don't know how many people went to see the Smackdown. They were really fun. 2-drink minimum for admittance, but also there was a lot of content behind those events, so they were both fun and informative. We developed an Entrepreneurs University curriculum. This was a database. It was basically an Excel spreadsheet that I kept. It held all of the classes that we had hosted since the beginning, our ideas for future events, which often came from either students at these events or professors, and our ideas for future visiting professors. What I learned, it's very important to develop a pipeline, develop a database of ideas, and also develop your own email list. I learned early on, as many of you have, that the MassBio emails do not always hit the target. So in both the Finance Committee and Entrepreneurs University, we had our own email list, which we would send out to supplement the MassBio emails. And in particular, I would note the Entrepreneurs University, often the way that we promoted them is John would send out one email to his network, and I would send out one email to my network, and we'd get all the people we needed to get registered through those 2 emails. Parallel processing, incredibly important. Going back to the Pharma Day slide, all of those were in process at the same time. And I found that it was easier to work on multiple events at the same time as it was to work on one event. 360 degrees, ideas and assistance came from everywhere. Every event that we held, we always asked people, do you have any ideas for events? Do you know anybody who would want to come and teach or be a panelist? And that was incredibly important. Both Chris and I, and John and I, have very strong networks, but I would tell you that we really added to those networks during the time, just again by using the resources that was available. Platform events, I think, very important. You can create platform events in each one of the examples that I showed, different people, but the ideas were about the same. So different panelists for each of those, but there are a bunch of sort of platform ideas that are out there, and I'm sure you can think about them. I'm just a dumb CFO. You're all smarter than I am, so if we can come up with it, I'm confident. Okay. Don't compete with a webinar. There's a lot of webinars out there, a lot of things going out. People are not going to leave their seats unless it's very interesting. Talking heads versus interesting panelists. This was one of, I think, the keys for me is that in all of the events that are running around Boston, you see the same people at some of these events. And I'm sure I've discovered that once I see somebody a couple times, I think I know what they're going to say. And that could be VCs, it could be investment bankers, founders of companies. Look for the people who have the interesting bio, have an interesting story to tell, but haven't necessarily appeared. And it goes back to the 6 degrees of separation, where we all know Kevin Bacon, or we can get to him. Actually, Facebook has published data saying that's now 4 degrees of separation. So you can get to some very interesting people. One example was Tillman Gerngross, who's a serial entrepreneur out of Dartmouth. He had never come to an event. We got him to a finance committee event. Took a little while, but once he came here, people said, wow, it was really interesting to meet him, hear about his story, and now he's come back several times. There are other Tillman Gerngrosses out there. Choose your dates carefully because there's a lot going on. One of the things that we did is we looked at the Doug McDougall Biomedical Communications website. They list everything that's going on around town and also internationally. So that's important in terms of driving attendance to the event. So that's what I learned, co-chair of 2 committees.
Thank you, John. Oops. Oh, where did I just do? All right, well, bear with me. Oh, let me turn this back on. Here we go. All right. Now we come to the most interesting part of our presentation. Here's what we've come up with for a framework for those 4 Global Topic Series forums. For March, tentative title, tentative title, The World is Small, Developing an Understanding of Business in the Global Framework. For April, we're going to start with our regional buckets. Basically, March is going to be a huge introduction to why is this important? Why is this important? Then April is EU 101, Understanding What You Need to Know. May, we'll look at Asia. And June, the Southern Hemisphere. And depending on how time goes, the 2020 report is coming out in April. It may be nice to do a wrap-up with some of the actual data that we've found. And Pete, do you want to chat about this?
Sure. So the idea here is, and this group really came up with the concept of let's do more on sort of global issues that we need to focus on as a membership organization. And all these forums are about getting good information to our members at the end of the day. It's sharing good information, and it's the networking that entails as well. And so what we thought in terms of kicking off a series of global focus meetings was to talk about, with an initial meeting, talking about presenting different organizations that are very networked globally. And we came up with a few examples. H3, which in this building has very impressive, their entire discovery research program is based on this very expansive global network of researchers. Martis, of course, is here with the Center for Excellence, where it manages centers around the globe as well. In looking at Cubis, the idea was you're a company with a very strong local presence, headquartered here, but also needs to partner as it gets its products overseas, and it partners with large and small companies. So the idea is sort of to have an introductory discussion about the concept of thinking globally and how different organizations at different phases of their development have done that. So this is very much sort of an introductory, the idea anyway, is sort of an introductory discussion of that subject matter. We have a couple guests, Horatio and Torsten, so I won't ask them. I'll ask the rest of the group. Does anybody have any idea how many foreign agency members we have here at MassBio? 19. We have 19 foreign agencies that are members of MassBio. Everybody from UK Trade and Investment to JETRO, the Japanese Trade and Investment, to BioWin Wallonia and Medicon Valley from Denmark and Sweden. We have a lot of ability to tap into some really good talent from overseas beyond our borders, be part of these events potentially as well. So not only bring in some of the local expertise we have on these different subject areas, but really pull in some new faces and some new perspectives that we can share with our members. And so we want to take advantage of those relationships that we have. And they're members for different reasons, as all our members are. And often it's to participate in the programming that this group puts together in terms of its networking, their ability to network with our cluster. But we want to sort of turn that around a little bit and really use them to pull in some perspective and talent to share with our members. So moving on from sort of the idea of this initial sort of introductory session, looking at the Europe, I shouldn't say the EU, Europe, and again introducing some basics about what's going on in Europe, and sort of a general discussion touching on different issues that our member organizations need to consider as they look to Europe as a potential place to partner or to do clinical trials or to as a market for entry for their products or partnering with other service organizations, what have you. So the idea again is sort of have a introductory, I think aptly phrased EU 101, and then as these regional forums proceed, we're also identifying some topics that we at some point in the future, so the second part of this series, do deep dives. So have a higher session perhaps on IP protection, beyond the borders, or clinical trials beyond the borders, or regulatory regimes beyond the borders. And I think our audience here is it's not Novartis or Pfizer. They have entire divisions working on these questions, but it's our small, mid-size organizations that need to consider these things fairly early in the process as they develop their technologies or they consider their partnering their services overseas and so forth. So that's the idea. So sort of quickly going through these.
Let me just interject one thing and hammer home what Pete has said. We have 4 series forums, just one per month: March, April, May, June, which gives awesome opportunity for any one working group to then say, okay, we want to do a deep dive on IP, or we want to do a deep dive on regulatory aspects, or how any of the topics can coordinate with one of the global series forums. There'll be plenty of time to do that. Bobby?
Susan, I was wondering, in the ones that are going to happen in March, April, May, how deep would they be? What would they just be an introduction of the topic, a little bit of a talk, or clearly we will not go into any deep dives in those forums, right?
These forums, no, these are rather general, broad sweeping, basically bringing to the membership, this is the EU, here's what you need to understand, here's some basics, and then plenty of time for deep dives, how to manage, establishing CRO relationships.
So a follow-up question to that is, let's say if I want to get something ready from CRO committee for April, do I need to identify topics much ahead of time so that you can advertise them in April? Or, because when people ask, okay, how else are you going to go deeper, you probably need to have a list of programming as well for the rest of the year. Hopefully,
that's the pipeline idea. Now that you've got an idea of the framework of the global series, that can give you a direction for related topics for CRO. But what we also need, and the goal for pretty much this meeting, is to get people to basically volunteer for lead for each of the 4 series forums. We need people to drive those. The first one should be pretty easy. The schedule is scheduled at mid-late March, depending on other events that are happening then. But we'd like working groups to take the lead on the series forums, and then as your groups meet, discuss this further, deeper dives in the intervening weeks. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I think as to note here, the last line on this EU 101 slide is the attendees will leave with a better understanding of what they need to understand about Europe. It's not so much, it's answering all the questions, but what questions do we in fact have to consider as we consider Europe as a marketplace or a place to partner or what have you. And I would want to invite at this point Torsten and Horacio, if about the appetite of our foreign agency members to really become involved in helping provide speakers and content in this area. And remembering that we have a crowd listening in, nice and loud if you could, just some quick perspective on that.
So from Denmark and Sweden, I can say that we have, and I'm discussing with them, we have a lot of very experienced people that would like to participate in this. People who have been in executives in some of our bigger companies, like Novo, Lundbeck, launched products in Europe and the US, but they are very seasoned and would like to participate. Yeah, so I would be happy to chip into the EU program.
And I concur with that. I think this is a great opportunity to make even stronger connections here and share information and experience and some tips on how to enter the European market. And we're already thinking about people that we can contact for deep dives, and I'll be happy to discuss that.
And often, a little bit more explanation of some of these relationships we have with foreign agencies. About 2 or 3 times a year, we have we actually have meetings with as many as 30, 35 visiting foreign delegations over the course of the year. They're not all with member organizations, but and about 2 or 3 times a year we do a focused event with, usually in partnership with one of our foreign agency members, where we're looking at particular issue areas, and we try to bring in from the membership expertise that. But there again, it's sort of presenting to this foreign delegation. What we want to do again is turn that around a little bit and get good information from our foreign agencies to our membership. So I think we have a wealth of opportunity to do that, working with them. And the rest of the slides are basically, again, these are sort of straw man proposals at this time. There's a lot more work we can do on these. But these are, Asia, obviously a huge geographic area with very different leaders in terms of clusters and markets, and a lot of difference there, but and certainly cultural differences that our members should be aware of as they consider Asia. Moving on, just sort of you're looking at Africa and South America. South America is I think sometimes a mystery to us in terms of what the market is there. First of all, for our products, and what the barriers are to entry, and in some cases they're very very high barriers, and we can talk about that. In Africa, we sort of suggest here with the first and third world meet, north and northern regions and southern regions of Africa, very well-developed economies, sophisticated and are real opportunities potentially, and then sort of the sub-Saharan region where you're really working with government organizations and NGOs in terms of getting products to the market there, and there are opportunities there to consider, and really a lot of unknowns that let's try to figure out some of that mystery. And so that's a quick look. I should also mention, our neighbors to the north are not represented there, but Canada, of course, presents a good opportunity for us as well. We have 3 Canadian foreign agency members, and they would certainly want to be engaged as well, so perhaps we do something specifically on opportunities in Canada as well. So that's a quick look at this. Again, these are strawman proposals, but we really look to this group and folks really coming on board and championing some of these events and help us make them a terrific forum series as we had this past year.
Thanks, Pete. Last year we had these oh wow topics where we were getting 100, 150 people registering. I think that we have the same kind of material going where we can do that again. So let's look at the first one. Again, as Steve said, this is a framework, and these were ideas we had for case studies. Anyone have any thoughts about possibly taking a lead on this and helping making this happen? Working group. Other suggestions for other companies that would be good for case studies? Thoughts, suggestions?
Are you looking for international networks, or is it just networks based various models?
Well, I guess what we're looking for is just a picture of who's out there now. What are global strategies now? And perhaps, some insight on trending for the future. Whoever moderates this panel, I'm assuming we'll do a panel. Does that make sense? Does that look like a good format for this kind of thing? We'll be able to talk about, why do we need to be looking outside of our own small world here in Massachusetts? What opportunities are available? John?
So one thought that comes to mind, I was curious to hear your feedback. Certainly the Gates Foundation as a organization that's really empowering change and engaging in very different business models. It's certainly not a company per se, but when you look across the global space and an organization that's transforming healthcare in various ways and shapes or forms. So I don't know, does that fit within the model? Would that be a nice round out? And when was the last time MassBio had someone from Gates Foundation in? They're investing, there's grants, there's all sorts of ways in which they're thinking about the global landscape.
Well, again, that may go to, you were here for the October 10th brainstorming? No, somebody brought up the issue of, looking, third world needs, they need help with malaria, things like that. This is Gates, of course, Gates focus, where does the money go? Where's the money needed? So that may be important in this discussion. I think for this session, we're talking to the membership, again, smaller companies that are looking outward, possibly for the first time. More thoughts on business models and examples?
Just a question. I'm wondering whether it might make sense as to maybe the kickoff speaker as part of the panel might be somebody from kind of one of the large global consulting practices that can actually kind of set the landscape with a framework to say, this is why, even though you're here, this is why you need to be thinking about being global, and then maybe kind of then do the deep dive with some of the other groups that are actually doing some global things. But we probably know why you should be doing some global stuff kind of at maybe 100,000 feet, but what are some of the real data or research that supports that? And is there somebody who's knowledgeable kind of in this area from one of those large firms that might actually be able to kind of just, I don't know, set the stage, kind of validate the importance of thinking global? Just an idea of kind of how to kick it off. I don't know that person or who those people are, but might be a thought.
I think that'd be the perfect moderator to introduce, to talk about that, and then introduce these companies who are actually in it and are doing it. Bobby?
Just building on the idea right there, maybe we should also think about the regulatory challenges that people in our field face when you're looking at global filing. So in our business, being global is a necessity actually. You cannot afford to not be thinking globally. Now, you may not have a global presence, but you may definitely have an intention at some point in time to market your product in ex-US markets, right? So in that case, maybe a regulatory...
Is that a deep dive after this?
Or maybe in the panel that we are thinking, somebody like an entrepreneur, a consultant, and a regulatory person to just set the stage for challenges that come from the regulatory perspective as well. And then it can go into a deeper dive in the rest of the year on a certain market.
Well, I think, yes. I think the last time that L&R met, we were talking about regulatory issues. maybe after concepts to be introduced at this session, and then deeper dives into regulatory aspects and legal aspects. I mean, this is.
I think it makes a lot more sense to first make a point why global thinking, or thinking, in a global framework is important. And that's probably not going to come from these novel business models. It's going to come from the need to have a broad strategy from the outset. And that's driven by regulatory and reimbursement issues, not by these collaborations. So I think that what you're suggesting is probably a better way to kind of make the point at the outset and then dive in. There is an issue, a specific issue with Europe, and this is what Europe has to offer, why Europe is better. These are the specifics of Asia. So it would make, to me, it would make more sense. This is, it's interesting, but it doesn't set out the need for the global topic.
Right. And I think that the customer base is in ex-US. Like, so for example, if you are a company dealing in HIV, it's you have to target Africa, Southeast Asia as a market. For that, you need regulatory strategy built in from day one. As opposed to if we were in the electronics industry, we would develop a product here first and then market it based on its utility. Whereas in our case, probably a majority of our customer base is outside the Western population anyway. So, something to maybe like highlight that as a major need in addition to the business model, but the fact that this is the need to do business locally.
So I guess our thinking was that these issues could be covered in an intro and in a discussion, and then just have examples of companies who are basically doing this. Any other thoughts? How would you structure, if not this, then how would we structure into a very basic intro?
Hopefully they can hear me. I see it in sort of three buckets. What do we call business? What we talk about the commercial aspects. I see A, the research, discovery, B, clinical development, and C, the commercial aspect. So are we talking about the whole A to Z, from research and discovery to alliances globally, taking advantages of the global CROs, medchem sources, any new assets you can in-license, and then clinical development. What do you do clinical development? Do you go only US or you go global? And then what I heard about the HIV and whatever the other cases where you go global and go commercial. So in a typical startup fashion, if I use my personal experience, you start small in the US and you find your partners as you grow on where you co-promote or co-develop internationally because you just don't have the assets and the resources to do that. So you get a global footprint by getting a partner in. So I'm just trying to frame, what are we talking about business here? Are we talking about the end game, or are we talking from the beginning to the end?
Mm-hmm.
And I think just to add to that, you bring up a really good point. Globalization for a small company is really different than globalization for a big company and what it means. And most small companies just don't do it at the beginning. It's just, so where is that inflection point? When do you start thinking about it? How do you access partners in Europe so that you can get into that? All that stuff is very important, I think.
Well, again, how to access partners in Europe would be part of the Europe 101, and then a deep dive. The way we set it up like this is, again, very broad swath, concepts, basic concepts, and examples of companies that are doing, that are already reaching out globally and making it work.
So is the suggestion that perhaps we're, as a membership, we're beyond this discussion, that we're already we already know we need to think globally, and we need to be understand these issues, and so is this are we beyond the sort of introductory focus that we have here to something else?
I don't know if
Is that
that's the case.
misreading?
I think, what might be useful is just to know what's different, because I think a lot of people don't even know what they don't know, right? What is different when you go overseas? What do I just not even think about in the US that I really need to be aware of because it's going to be different when I go over to Europe? I mean, marketing campaigns, those are regulated in very different ways, right? Reimbursement, very, very different depending on where you go. Import, export, it's all big issues that a lot of people who've never done it don't even know what to think about, right? I think those are the topics that might be useful in this kind of an overview.
Again, as deeper dives.
Yeah, but at least set up the framework. This is what you got to be thinking about, and we're going to talk about it later in depth. But here's the broad brush stroke.
Sure.
Question?
It could be an overview of threats and opportunities of these markets. And I think if you look to Europe, for example, if you're a small biotech company, many small biotech companies, when they do the valuation, they don't think about the reimbursement landscape in Europe. So that's an opportunity. How do you actually calculate the European market and do it in a way that makes sense for investors? And on the threat side, looking at IP in Europe right now is a mess because you need to go to every one of these 28 countries. And maybe it's not feasible if you're a small startup here, maybe you shouldn't try to get legal protection in all of these 28 countries. Maybe you should just start somewhere and then later on you should go broader. So that's two perspectives. But I think if you doing a session like this are able to build a very simple model where you show all the opportunities that you can have by going global and then all the threats, and then having 5 to 7 bullets under each of these, it's a good thing, it's a good system or good model to have in the back of your head as you go on.
Actually, that's a good point. So if you were to think about like a punchline, I think like for the European section, we know that the European market is very mature, at par with the US. So the challenges over there are not regulatory oriented. The challenges over there probably may be more discovery oriented or partnership oriented for manufacturing. Whereas in Asia or South America, the whole regulatory may be more of an emphasis or legal may be an emphasis because your economics of making it work. So like, we can framework one as a, the context of commercialization could be how to bring the price point lower when it comes to Asian markets or the South American markets. For Europe, it could be R&D discovery focused, and for clinical, it could be Asia focused, like given the population. So if for somebody were to attend these forum on day 1 on March, what are the messages that they're looking forward to? And then everything else could be a theme from that point onwards. So partnership with Europe, cost with Africa, third world, and clinical development with Asia. And of course, there will be subtopics along the way, but if your target market is Asia, you're not worried about partnership or commercialization, you're probably worried about clinical more. And then you can program around that. So different forums or different working groups can get engaged as they come along. So for example, I would be more interested in the commercialization aspect representing the CRO, CMO side. How to bring the price point lower, and we can do more specific programming on how scale-up can help in third world countries, how to make the cost of goods cheaper, which probably means nothing for Europe that much. It will never be a cost margin question in Europe.
So would that not be a deep dive off of, say, one of the EU or just a deep dive? It doesn't have to be related to any one bucket, but that could be a whole standalone.
Right. So for example, like think of Asia one-on-one, how to bridge the clinical gap. Europe one-on-one, how to build partnerships for discovery. And the third one, which is the South American, how to bring a cost to a commercialization. So like a theme, and then you go into each of these subtopics as you go along, but it's unlikely that there will be some kind of a discovery partnership with an African company. In my opinion, they will be a lot more interested in making sure that you can make it cheaper.
But again, wouldn't these be part of the discussion for each regional bucket? So, and then if, you know, the CRO, say, wants to do a deeper dive on something a little more in detail.
Susan, are you trying to keep, for this first meeting, are you trying to have like a really broad meeting?
Yes.
Okay. I had an idea as you were speaking, and I think I like where you're going. What would make it fun to me would to come to a meeting where a representative from India, from England or Ireland, or someone from Sweden, you know, or then you have someone from China, and literally one person that's there, not so much like selling their country, but perhaps laying out the opportunities and strengths and weaknesses of their country and what their sort of view is on things, and then that would allow you to, because it would be really interesting to have these different people up there, then have someone who's sort of like Bob Coughlin in the sense that they're like that bio sort of person that's taking a different look from the whole thing, taking a, you know, a New World Order perspective on drug development, but sort of looking at it holistically from around the world and seeing it tied together. That would be fun to go to, you know, just at least here. And then you can go into all your deep dives from there moving forward in a variety of it. It would be good to have a fundamental knowledge of some different countries and what it's, you know, what, we always think of Africa, oh gosh, oh, AIDS, malaria. I bet there's more to it than that down there. I bet there's some other opportunities for us to work on. It would be good to know that, you know, they do really important manufacturing, and it's a great place for companies to look at perhaps doing more manufacturing, or perhaps the challenges. We have had tons of layoffs in the UK. We've got these really talented scientists. How do we get them to start working in the US more easily, as opposed to wasting scientific time? Why can't we figure out ways to make science move forward more quickly? So I see a wide variety of things you can take with it.
So Patrick, are you thinking that the panelists or the speakers would be representatives from those different trade organizations? Or,
you know, I don't know what you get.
Because I would think that might be too
great.
salesy. Because
Right,
they
you
clearly
wanna
want you to come to their country.
Of course they do,
Yeah.
right. It would be
Sorry
almost,
guys, but yeah, I'm thinking about the numbers.
You're right.
Yeah.
No, it would be almost be cooler to get someone who's at a company, and this is their, I don't know, you can't, see, you want to be like their biased opinion, right? You want it to be just, hey, this is what I think, but it's based upon my years of experience being in this.
Or maybe somebody who was with one of the large corporations and they opened up China for Genzyme.
As long as they're allowed to do it, you know, and I don't know what they're able to say and can't say.
Right,
And that's the only thought that
We'll get some of these people that are former employees.
You're right
of
though on the
those
sales
companies.
side. But I bet there's lots of people here that would love to talk about their countries, or at least people to talk about they know about those countries.
But I think even somebody from a big corporation that's opened a site, they don't have to talk about their corporation. They can just give, here's my inside scoop on what this country's all about.
Right,
Not
yeah.
my company, not my projects, but just as an overview.
That'd be
what's
cool.
this country all about?
Yeah, some of the opportunities, threats, concerns, you need to think about
Could
those.
be an academic, by the way, guys. It could be coming from, you know, one of those places which is really safe.
I was thinking along the same way before Patrick said, talking as we were going around and looking at these late stage 3 Novartis, and the gentleman just left talk about the Gates Foundation. You have what, 19 foreign, so instead of them coming in and be very sort of
Do business here.
You know, they can identify companies who actually moved into the region.
I like that.
And they can, you know, we can reach out to those companies where they can speak firsthand, you know, how we moved, you know, our work, what didn't. You have 19 foreign agencies. They can tell you, you know, here's A, B, and C who came in a few years ago, and, you know, talk to them, and if they're interested to come.
They could probably even reach out and find people who are interested to come for us.
And then, as Mark suggested, someone from a big global consulting practice to moderate.
I think those are great perspectives. Like Thorsten, we were talking about opportunities and threats, and we were talking about somebody from, let's say, from industry with significant experience. I remember attending a par excel analysis of South America, and it was the COO who made an incredible analysis of every single country and the pros and cons of going. And she emphasized that how important it was to develop a strategy based on your own objectives. And in the case of Europe, for instance, you also have a very strong network of 30 bioclusters. I think it would be great maybe to try to get their perspective, because that would be a regional view on Europe,
Yeah, they're safe people to ask. You know, it's, most can up their back to have their opinions. It's helpful for everybody.
So again, we've got our regional buckets to take deeper dives into Europe or South America or Asia. This sounds like a good idea. What do you think, Pete?
Well, I think in terms of getting representatives from our foreign agencies I think that would be an easy, I think everybody would be very willing to participate in that kind of discussion. Maybe the idea of something of a round table where, you introduce, a topic area for those representatives to talk about what's, issues in each of their countries, regions, and, compare and contrast as you go around the room. Maybe that's an approach that you can take. Maybe, I don't think we want 19 panelists, but maybe some representative of the different regions to feature some case studies. Here are particular perhaps Massachusetts companies that are already engaged with us, and then cover some of these issues sort of in a general way, and then again we go into the deeper dives with later meetings.
So like we provide them a template of what we want them to speak about as opposed to them making a sales talk, right?
Right.
So for example, if the two of you were to collaborate representing the European cluster, like not necessarily your individual countries, you could be making a joint presentation on the pros and cons, and maybe hopefully with some candid feedback as well. So that if I'm a small company, I have more of a trust-building relationship as opposed to a regular sales call that I'm going to be getting on a regular, frequent basis anyway. So similarly, if there were like, let's say, India, China cluster, maybe South Korea cluster, that could be one. And if there's a similar cluster, I do not know if you have any representation from South America, but like we invite our member companies or these foreign companies to make a talk, but collaborate on a template that hopefully does not become too much of a marketing thing,
Right.
but more of a.
Well, you could even have, you could sort of feature, a moderator who keeps it very focused and can ask sort of these.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the Parexel
Yeah.
sounds like a really good one. Like somebody who has been there, done that, who deals with global filing or global regulatory issues or legal issues for that matter. Contract negotiations can be a very big problem when it comes to globalization as well. The court of arbitration is a major one.
What you said too, when you said maybe it's possible to talk to these people and find a Massachusetts company that's actually moved there, because that would be the most pertinent piece of information, right? So if you could find a company, just contact those guys and say, hey, is there a Mass company that's doing business over there right now? And then get that Massachusetts company to come in and talk and say, hey, here's exactly what we experienced when we wanted to go there. So if you're going to want to do it, you're going to have to do the same thing, right? I mean, that might be the most pertinent.
Well, isn't that what Angela suggested, to get agencies to recommend companies who are doing it?
Yeah.
And that's the first
If it's
session.
specifically Massachusetts companies, I think, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
No, I think that sounds like a perfect first session.
Yeah, that could, Biogen they do have a big, both R&D and production facility in Denmark. I think though, because it's so broad, you need to think who's the target audience. Who do you want? Is it the startups that you would like, or is it the larger companies? And what key learnings should they actually bring with them when they leave?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I guess it would be most interesting to do it for the startups, right? Those who don't already focus on the outside.
Big pharma probably already has a lot of infrastructure and they know where they're going, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's the small companies that don't have a clue that probably would benefit the most. Right?
And the mid-size who are already ready to dive, but where to go?
Right.
I think this looks like a good first session. What do you think?
I think we're getting there. My question is, for this, this is one of those things that we might hear back. Well, why are we
from a certain part of our membership, maybe specifically the CRO part of the membership, why are we exposing our members to all of these foreign opportunities when we're still trying to reach the Massachusetts-based market ourselves, and we're based here? Is that not going to happen, or is it?
Well, I think if you put the focus on selling your services and goods outside of the U.S. rather than outsourcing and offshoring your work, that's going to just take that whole problem away. Right?
I agree with that.
I mean, I think you have to look at it, it's the reality that the world or the globe is smaller. So companies who aren't ready to go global aren't going to go global just because they attend this session. So it's a bigger thought. I mean, so I think you can do a lot more of those deeper dives with the CRO, CMO kind of here. But this is, you know what, this is something else that's happening that you need to be aware of. And as Steve said, you know what, maybe an opportunity for some of those groups to actually sell their services globally if they have those capabilities. If not, you know what, they're still a domestic provider.
I mean, speaking from experience, anybody who wants to offshore is already doing it. So, it's not really going to happen because you put on a seminar, suddenly people are going to start offshore. It's not.
It's the perspective.
So I just got an idea. The small guys in Massachusetts could also learn from some of the bigger guys. Of course, for Rachel and me, we could do just an overview of Europe and so on, and others could do of Asia. But I think what would really bring value could be if somebody from some of your larger companies, let's say the head of reimbursement, gave an introduction to when they're thinking about global reimbursement in Europe, in Asia, how do they do that? And regulatory could be the same. How do they actually manage and share those learnings? So focus on the three main areas being reimbursement, regulatory, and then IP. Yeah. Yep. Then bring in people from large mass companies, and then you could pair it with some of the more overall views that we could bring in if necessary.
There's a lot of expertise in Massachusetts going global. I'm thinking about this former Genzyme executive who launched Genzyme in Canada from his basement. And he launched Genzyme in the Americas. And then he was a general manager for Europe and Asia. Now, then I have a question in terms of how that experience from a large company can be used by smaller companies or startups. I've seen a few startups starting from scratch, from the very beginning, thinking global. Mm-hmm. In terms of, okay, we're going to build our distribution network. So we're going to launch this prototype, sure. And then we're going to connect immediately with it. And just one question in terms of how usable is that information from a...
Does it translate?
Again, another good point. How will we fix the time now? I'm going to have... do we want to start? I would think we could start fleshing this out now, given that what we've been talking about. People want to volunteer to take a lead on this one. I know Mark and Steve, you had great ideas, Angelos.
We don't do anything globally at this point, so
we don't really have much connection in that area.
Well, we do have resources. All the other co-chairs, Farm Advisory Board, the gentleman in the room, and us. We need a working group to take the lead on executing on this. There's a lot of material here, and there'll be a lot of opportunities to bring up more specific deep dives once we get started.
Susan, I'll offer to kind of participate with groups to maybe try to narrow the focus on this March one a bit more. But we'll need to reach out to a lot of other folks. As I said, we're not doing anything globally in our companies. So, but in terms of kind of maybe trying to be a little bit of a facilitator with different groups. I'm happy to try to do that.
I can help you too if you know, not saying.
Perfect.
That's all right.
Okay.
You take the lead.
All right.
It's an army
Set up
of
some
two.
meetings, and those who want to participate can. We'll narrow the focus, and if they don't participate, well, they don't like what we've come up with. Yeah.
I think that's terrific. Okay, that'd be great.
We have another meeting here at some point. Maybe it could be Peter, Horatio.
Yeah.
Part of it.
Sure.
I'll be part of
You
it.
don't have to.
No, I'll do it. Okay, fine, all right. We, you know, like you say, we're not working globally either, but, you know, I can help coordinate, help kind of coalesce something.
So we have our facilitators, Mark, Steve, and Angelos. Wonderful. If you want to coordinate any con calls or meetings here with me, just, you know, we'll be in touch. All right, that's great. Kind of flesh this out and give it more substance. But I think that that's a terrific idea, having agencies identify member companies and have them speak firsthand with some basic concepts. All right. I know you've been talking a lot about, do we want to call this EU or Europe?
Yeah, I would say Europe,
You
yeah.
want to call it Europe? All right, so let's just call this Europe.
Amazingly, not every country is in the EU in Europe.
They're not allowed to.
Oops, that was the wrong thing. Never mind, I'll change this. Any thoughts on someone wanting to take a lead on working through this one?
I can take that one.
All right. And again, you're not an army of one. You have resources. Constantine. We have plenty of time. Press others into service as you see fit. Asia, I know David Hoffman and Sonoya had a lot of suggestions about Japan, Sonoya. Anybody else who may have a particular insight or desire to dive into this one? Again, volunteer people as you go. Or we can discuss this one further at the next meeting. June, Southern Hemisphere. Anybody come up with a great desire to do this one?
I think we probably need to have more people in the room, Susan.
I know. All right. I think this is a good place to start.
Yeah, if we can get a start on 1 and 2, then maybe in January, February, when we have our next meeting, we can kind of then enlist others to kind of help with ideas and resources for 3 and 4.
That's how we did it last time, too. All right, and again, there's less to do, so we have more time to make these real qualitative. All right. So right now I have Mark, Angelos, and Horatio working on the first one, and Constantine the second.
Have you fixed the dates for them, or is
I'm sorry?
Have you fixed the dates for them, or?
Not yet, not yet. You know, as you flesh it out more, you may have speakers that, you know, want to go to more of one date than the other. I will be in touch with what's available today, because there are meetings happening in March and April that we have to work around. So, action items, we're here already. Schedule planning meetings for this, and also with your own working groups. Get those on the calendar. And as these forums take shape, put them in the planner and get them to me so that I can get them in the calendar. I still have I still have room on the calendar for deep dive forums. January it's iffy, but certainly February. Please contact me on those. Our next meeting will be January 9th, barring a snowstorm. I hope that we will have a full crowd. Anything else? Anything else? Suggestions? Comments? All right. Thank you so much for reading the bad writing.
Susan, can I ask you to do me a favor? Just for the 6 or so folks in the, for the planning the March event, can you just send an email so that we all have our respective emails handy?
Absolutely.
I'm guessing that you have those, so.
Yeah,
so Peter,
sure.
Thorson,
Yeah,
Horatio,
contact.
me, Steve,
Yeah.
Angelo, so
And also,
I might be able to dig it up.
maybe it's on the website, I don't know, the list of the 19 agencies that are members of MassBio.
If you go on to the membership directory, it classifies the different memberships, hit foreign agencies.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
easy to find, okay.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And I'll do a brief recap for the meeting.
Okay, because I still think those are resources to start in terms of case studies and, you know, what was 5 years ago happening and what's 5 years from now happening. Yeah, we definitely need to help with those because that's their job.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Okay.
And,
We're a little underrepresented in Asia right now, but we've had some past members we could probably tap into, and we might have Korea coming on board, so.
Yeah, on the development side, we do a lot of, I know, I do a lot of work with Asia, so I have personal experience. Other people have personal experience, but I don't pay any markets outside of skiing there, so it's a different ballgame, but yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll talk. Anything else?
Can we spend 5 minutes, those thinking about the March event before we leave? So might either save a phone call later this week or at least give us some focus. And we can meet over here. Yeah. All right, great, good. Thanks, Susan.
One aside, I will be out and incommunicado from the 19th of December,
Possibly through the first week of January. My son is having surgery and I need to, that's where I'm going to be. I have limited access to email though. Thank you all.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah.